Today we're going to have 5 different tracks on 2 different rooms. This room is going to be non-Azure related, and the other room is going to be the Azure track, right?
Azure, not Azure.
Right.
Alex?
Yeah. So I just want to say a few words about the schedule roughly, because all the information you have it on the .NET BC user group website. From 10 to 11, from 9 to 10, sorry, we're going to have the opening keynote with Richard Campbell. From 10 to 11, we're going to have on the Azure side containers in Azure. On the other side, Microsoft bots. From 11 to 12, on Azure side, we're going to have big data tools in Azure, and on the other side, top 7 technology you should learn in 2017 as a full stack developer. We're going to have a lunch break from 12:15 to 1 o'clock. When we're going to have the lunch break, we're going to give away some numbers, where we're going to have a draw for a Surface Dial and for some Starbucks $10 gift cards. So this is going to happen before the lunch. You're going to
and those for the early birds, right?
Card.
For the early birds. So those are for the people that sign up early.
The early birds.
So we'll deal with that at lunch.
Yeah. From 1 to 2 o'clock, we're going to have on the Azure track the Service Fabric, and the other one the Fluent Design. From 2 to 3, we're going to have on Azure side the serverless computing with Azure Functions, and on the other side the Universal Windows Platform. From 3 to 4, we're going to have on Azure side the Cloud for Good project, and on the other side the ASP.NET Core 2.0. After this, from 5 o'clock, we're going to go to Boston Pizza for some pizza and beer. Now the food is covered, you pay for that actually, but we're going to have breakfast and lunch here. So now I'm going to mention a few notes about Richard Campbell. He spent his time in computing industry since 1977, and he was a co-founder of Strange Loop Network and was on the board of directors of Telerik. Today he is a consultant for different technology firms and the founder and chairman of Humanitarian Toolbox, which is a public charity that builds open source software for disaster relief. Richard is also the host of 2 podcasts, the .NET Rocks, which has 3 shows per week, and Run as Radio podcast, which is 1 time per week for the IT pros. So I don't know if you want Mark and Anthony to say a few words about Rex.
Got anything to say, Mark?
Richard, you can just.
Hard to believe, but no.
He's quiet. Tony?
Yeah, we're good.
Good?
Then Richard, we
I
can.
think we're good.
Thanks so much. And thanks for taking off a sunny Saturday. That's not an easy call to make. And I appreciate your thinking there. Since we already had the bio, I will just plug Humanitarian Toolbox. We are building open source software for disaster relief organizations, and we always can use your help. I have new projects coming online. If you're into .NET Core, one of our popular projects right now is called Already, and we're working with the Red Cross on that one, and we're really helping coordinate skilled volunteers using mobile apps and web and cloud technology. I'm in negotiations right now to take on a project called Hospital Run, which is an Ember.js app of all things that provides hospital admission and tracking software for hospitals in developing nations. It's part of the Cure International group. So there's a bunch of different projects going on at any given time. I have 3 or 4 more that we're lighting up right now. We are looking for developers who want to contribute. Go to hdbox.org. We'll tell you more about it. I went to Build. How many folks went to Build? Just a couple of hands. So I've been to every Build, for better or worse. This time it was in Washington, which meant it was just a drive for me, and I got to pay for parking, $40 a day. But we got a lot of insight what's going on. And how many folks watched the keynotes? There's just a handful of people that actually watched the streamed keynotes. I am not going to run down the keynotes per se. I'm going to sort of talk through some highlights on different pieces, and I'm hoping to give you a little insight into what's going on inside of Microsoft. I don't work for Microsoft. I've never worked for Microsoft. I am a Microsoft Regional Director, which is a terrible title because I don't work for Microsoft, I don't have a region, and I don't direct anything. But I've had that title for about 15 years. And what it really means is that there's about 140 of us in the world, and we're deeply embedded into Microsoft. We have a lot of influence. We're able to talk to teams pretty deeply. We bring in a lot of different folks around. You may have run across my podcasts before, if you haven't seen them. So .NET Rocks we've been doing since 2002. Yesterday we published, or Thursday we published episode 1444. We're actually down to 2 shows a week. We're dialed back a little bit, not because of lack of content, more of a lack of sponsorship, but we're working on that. I also exercise my IT brain for in the form of Run As Radio. That's once a week, every Wednesday since April of 2007. After the first build in 2011, I don't know how many people remember the first build in 2011, but it was all about Windows 8, and they almost didn't say .NET Rocks, .NET at all, that whole show. And Carl and I came out of build 2011 in Anaheim going, wow, we make a show called .NET Rocks. And in this particular moment, .NET doesn't seem to rock all that much. So we started a new show called The Tablet Show. It was our hedge. We thought tablet development is going to be important, mobile development is going to be important, cross-platform development is going to be important. Let's focus on that. We continue to do DNR because it's not like everybody abruptly evaporated. And from that low in 2011 for .NET, and it was a serious low, .NET climbed back up and became remarkable. It actually completely transformed itself between 2011 and today, being a cross-platform tool and solution that works across multiple devices. And so in 2014, we rolled the tablet show into .NET Rocks, just combined the two, which is why we stopped making that particular show. So, if you watch these keynotes, Build used to be about developers. And a lot of folks that were watching the live stream said, it seems a little consumery. It seems a little all over the map, actually. Normally they would show you something that they could do that was cool and then say, here's the SDK, you can do it. And they did some of that at Build, but it's not the only thing they did. They did a variety of different bits and pieces that were kind of all over the map. And I think you have to be aware when you're watching this that they know there's a much broader audience watching it, not just us. We represent a small section of what's being streamed. Certainly everybody that attended, there was about 5,500, were very dev focused. But for the outside world, this is sort of a taste of where Microsoft's going. And Microsoft gets a lot more attention these days than they did just a few years ago. As someone who's seen them all and watched different ways to do it, what I liked about this particular set of keynotes was that it wasn't a shopping list. We've had builds in the past where it was half day of keynotes every day, and every product team got their 10 minutes to show you their bits till we all wanted to die. It was notable that at Build we didn't see anything from VSTS. The team services folks were there, but they weren't in the keynotes at all. So they narrowed the focus down quite a bit into particular areas. And I want to run down these areas and sort of talk about why they got airtime and why you should be interested. And most of these areas then are reflected in sessions we have over the rest of today. So I'm actually going to start with Fluent. Now, it's easy to ignore Fluent too, because it's just another thing. They're playing around with the UI in Windows again. But I think it's different and important. There's going to be a session done by Jan after lunch today about Fluent, and certainly important from this respect. In the end, this is all XAML. How many folks have been using XAML for anything? Just a handful of us, okay? XAML's had a tough go of it. XAML started back in 2006 as a code named Avalon. Its original intent was to fix the way Windows drew on the screen. That was its original intent, but that's not what happened, because Longhorn happened and Vista happened. And in the process of trying to get Vista out of the door, they ejected Project Avalon. They put it back to the .NET development team, and it became Windows Presentation Foundation, WPF. And that's not inherently a bad thing. became a part of the .NET suite. That's our first version of XAML. But if you notice, it worked back then, Microsoft never used it for anything. The first time that Microsoft used WPF was for Studio 2010. And so XAML was kind of an orphan for quite a while as a technology. Now, what really made a difference for it was Silverlight. Silverlight took a subset of the XAML set and started building some cool things. In fact, that was actually a cross-platform technology before Microsoft really wanted to talk about making cross-platform technology, because Silverlight ran beautifully on the Mac. And of course, the amazing guys over in Miguel Diacaz's group built Moonlight. However briefly they worked on that, again, to provide that to Linux as well. And that was the beginning of the fragmentation of XAML. In the Windows 8 era, they pulled XAML back into Windows, because that's where it needed to be. And in fact, to this day, XAML is still part of the Windows team. And it's one of the schisms that once I tell you this exists, you'll see it happen throughout the way Microsoft communicates. The Windows team and the development orgs are not the same orgs. So when you see the Windows team, they're talking about Universal Windows Platform, the UWP, and they own XAML. So their focuses tend to be on those things. The dev teams are focused on the cross-platform things. .NET Core, ASP.NET, those kinds of tooling. They're much more cross-platform. Now the teams are doing their best to get along, much better than they have in the past, but you need to be aware that they're actually two different teams. Now, one of the things that came out of Build was this concept of the XAML standard. And it is exactly the same concept as what they did with .NET standard. They developed .NET standard because there are many flavors of .NET. Now that we're running in a cross-platform world and we need to deal with this problem, how do we level it out so that whenever somebody says .NET, they mean the same thing? And so .NET standard is really about setting a bar for a set of features so that whether you're working in Xamarin, trying to build iOS and Android apps, working in Windows, or working in the cloud or on ASP.NET, we all are talking about the same thing. This is really only going to come to fruition in a way that is meaningful this summer. .NET Standard 2, along with Core 2, will represent us finally getting a benefit from it. Right now, most people don't care a lot about standard. There's 1.4, 1.5, and 1.6, and nobody seems to care all that much. Where we're all going to intersect is on 2, because 2 is going to be the one where we're going to start picking up code that we built on one platform, dropping it on another, and it will just run. And that's pretty important. And it's taken them 2 years to get to this point, that in the next few months we're going to really get a benefit from it. So the fact that they have now declared a XAML standard represents the same goal, just at the beginning. We're just starting out on the path. There are implementations of XAML that run within Windows. There is the WinPhone edition. There is the fragments that are left of Silverlight. There is what Xamarin has done with Xamarin Forms. They all represent fragmentations of XAML. They're going to get rid of that fragmentation. They're going to bring it together. Okay, and it's one of the mechanisms to help the Windows teams and the dev teams work more closely together. Now, what does this have to do with Fluent? Well, Fluent is really the first time we're seeing the Windows teams think in terms of us as developers working with XAML again. When Windows 8 took over XAML, when they pulled it back in, those are all C++ developers. They jumped the .NET stuff off and they did their implementations in C++. And if you wanted to build stuff in Windows 8, it was very challenging. And they had a separate line entirely for the .NET people in the form of WPF, which had minimal amount of people working on it. It stayed very separate. And the goal here is this idea of how do I build an app that works across all of these different device sizes, from the phone through the tablet, the PC, and the laptop, all the way up to the 3-foot and 10-foot experience that are Surface Hub and Xbox. And Fluent is starting to really address that. So this idea that if you set a 24 px font on a phone, it's roughly the same size to your eye as it is on an Xbox, which actually means it's dramatically bigger. But they're asking this design language to understand how far away it is from you. There's another aspect to this that's interesting. And again, Jan will dive into the details of this. I just want to get you excited about it. Skeuomorphism is this idea of creating natural-looking UIs, ones that we can identify with. This concept of natural affordisms, right? I see a file and I drop it in a garbage can, and that actually means delete this file. Now, skeuomorphism can go too far, and I would present this as the ultimate manifestation of skeuomorphism run amok. I wanted a list of my books on the phone, and you did this. All right? This is an iPhone app. It is, or an iPad app. It's out of control. It's a waste of space. And there was a lashback against this level of skeuomorphism a few years ago, and we went to the flat design. And one of the manifestations of the flat design is Win8. Primary colors, big fonts. There's nothing real here. It's very flat. I mean, one of the things they managed to do is create icons that now encapsulate ADD. Oh no, click me, click me. And obviously, pieces of this still exist today in Win10, right? This was a big leap. They pushed awfully far, and one would argue that it was too far. This is to swing the other way, as humans are prone to do. They went to an extremely flat design, and they lost some things along the way. And I would say this design sits between the two. This is fluid. Okay, now I'm not a designer. I don't necessarily think that way, but smart design people point out things to me that sort of show up in this. The fact that the background of this frontline window just vaguely reflect the background of the desktop itself gives us a sense of depth. That the picture I'm working on is highlighted compared to the other pictures, so that we naturally have a sense of focus. That there is a sense of motion and material in there as well. These are all the elements of fluent design. And one of the strengths they've got here is they're incorporating more devices. People ask me, what's the difference between responsive web design and what they're doing here? And I would argue that the biggest difference is, besides you're working in XAML versus CSS. I mean, JavaScript's way better than it used to be. CSS is still a pain.
Absolutely.
And XAML has its issues, but it's a bit more addressable. But I would argue the greatest strength that we have here is the input devices. Where the web falls down is the moment you move away from keyboard and mouse. Touch is mediocre, pen is hopeless. Don't even talk to me about gesture. But all of those things can be picked up in XAML well. And so as we start thinking about our new form factors and our new input methods, this stands to be the most capable way for us to actually deliver on all that capability. A couple of other things that are very interesting to me in dealing with fluent design is that it's not done. Normally, when we found out about the Metro interface, when it was finished, Microsoft presented, ta-da! And you can program in it if you understand C++. Enjoy it. Right? They've put a couple of wrappers here and there, trying to make it a little less painful, but in the end, that's what they did. That is not what they're doing here. We're used to the development team presenting us a beta or even an alpha. Let's face it, the first versions of ASP.NET Core, those were alphas. And we got to be a part of it for as much pain as that actually was. This is the Windows team doing the same thing. And that, to me, is remarkable and unusual. And if you go to docs.microsoft.com, have everybody been to docs.microsoft.com? Documentation doesn't suck anymore. Right? Don't go to MSDN, don't go to TechNet, go to docs.microsoft.com. The group of people that are building those docs, they really get it. And wherever they don't get it, you can edit it. The edit button is always there. It's run through GitHub. You can just make a check-in. I fix spelling mistakes myself. You can do all of those things. They also have embedded executable code for all of the samples, so you can actually run them. But the more important thing to me, the one that made my eyes bug out, was on the acrylic section of Fluent, which is really talking about materials. Right? They have this idea that this will provide reveals and transparencies and so forth properly in .NET, the same set of libraries that Windows itself was going to use. There's a comment section. And people are writing comments, and the teams are responding. So you're seeing actual conversations going on between the team and folks playing with this technology. And they're saying things like, we get it, I'm going to put that in for the next build, you'll see it in a couple of days. And if you want this code, this is what Windows Insiders has become. Right? I don't know about you, but when I first saw Windows Insiders, I was like, oh good, we get to be beta testers of Windows so that we'll like it before it comes out. Let's not have another Vista moment again, right? Because I'm just a little cynical. Maybe you'd call it wisdom, that, you know, I came from there. But the Insiders program has evolved into exposing these new APIs to us so that we can have influence for how they're implemented. And this is .NET through and through, coming from the Windows team. And that to me is extraordinary. It says volumes about how far the organization has come, that they're working with us to help define the new UIs that are appearing in Windows. And this is in the Insiders build. You'll also see Fluent now is applied to the Windows Store. If you update the Windows Store with your Insiders build, you'll see they're actually building with this too. So it doesn't matter whether you're an API person or not, if you really care about Windows and so forth, this is a big deal because it represents a change in the shape of the company and how they're interacting with us, our opportunity to participate in the evolution of Windows itself. UWP, in my mind, is a little bit of a sullied name because for a long time it was universal as long as you cared about Windows Phone. But now that even Microsoft doesn't seem to care about Windows Phone anymore, we can start talking about what does matter, right? And it is smaller form factors, larger form factors, different input devices, the dial, the pen, gesture. All of these things are coming to fruition in a common set of languages and a common set of tooling. Admittedly, it is still early. If this interests you, you get to participate. But as the XAML standard comes along, the code you learn to write here will apply everywhere. I expect fully on iOS and Android as well. One more piece about UWP and then we'll get away from it.
Richard, that's a question.
Sure.
Can you go back to the previous slide? Why this 5 item does not put the voice, like a voice inside?
They're not there yet. This is about visualization primarily. And Jan will go into more details on this in his talk this afternoon, about how they're going to do that. I bring it up myself because I am looking at the way that XAML is structured and saying XAML is well positioned to absorb these different UI devices. So right now they're talking about dial and ink, but you can expect the others to drop into place. It's just not there yet today. We're seeing voice in other places.
Thank you.
Talking about Windows template. So this is another thing that surprised me, that the UWP folks, the Windows folks, built a tool to help you get a working template of an app in UWP. So this is essentially a giant wizard to walk you through what features you need. Oh, and by the way, open source project on GitHub. Download it today, and it basically will spit out a template for you of the correct approach to UWP. This is a way for the Windows team to be able to work with us as developers living inside of Studio by providing tooling that will spit out a Studio project with their preferred approaches to how you use Windows 10 or any of the other devices in that spectrum. And I love that my animated GIF worked here. I'm happy about that. One more Windows thing I want to mention. This was not necessarily part of build, but I think it's very important. And it is also talking about the evolution of Microsoft itself. Microsoft has gotten smarter. Nano Server is easy to grasp, right? They presented Nano Server to us as, we're going to make a super lightweight version of Windows. Great for containers, great for high scalability, so forth and so on. That's not the only thing that's important about Nano Server. Anybody played with Nano Server? Important thing to know about Nano Server is 64-bit only. The thunking layer is gone. That's why it's so much thinner and lighter. There's no 32-bit stuff in that at all. Now, you may have been compiling your .NET project at 64-bit, but until you run it on Nano Server, you don't really know. I can't tell you how many projects have a 32-bit driver they're dependent on somewhere inside, and until you fire it onto Nano Server, it's just going to work. And any other version of Server, it's going to, oh, let us thunk to the 32 for you, because you're using that old data access driver. Nope, Nano Server's going to go, you die. That driver doesn't exist. And now you have to actually hunt it down. And I see Windows 10X as very much the same concept. Microsoft has been incredibly loyal to us for decades. There has always been a path forward. No dev left behind. No user left behind. Your app worked on the old version, it'll work on the new version. They've always done that. And the side effect has been an incredible amount of cruft. The last version of Internet Explorer has 6 different rendering engines in it. When you tell it to run IE55 mode, it's actually running the IE55 code in it. Oh, and it has the IE7 code, and the IE8 code, and the IE9 code, and the IE10 code. Gee, I wonder why the browser's so big. So they need a radical break. Edge. People don't like Edge. Ta-da. Right? Radical breaks when we've had decades of back-end support. Notice I left IE6 out of the list because nobody runs IE6. This is an approach to starting to cut away the cruft. To be able to say, here are the libraries we're going to leave out. So if you're ready, you can move up. That's why they're selling 10S the way they are. 10S comes on particular devices, namely the Surface laptop, but it also comes with Pro license just in case. So if you, like me, run into, oh, I'm dependent on this app, I think it'll run all 64-bit, I think it'll run nothing but new stuff, and then when it doesn't, you're like, pull the chute, we're okay, we'll go back to the old version of Windows. But at least we have a way forward, a way to start shaking off this debris we may not be using anymore. And I think it's incredibly clever that they found a way to present to us a coherent way forward without breaking things unnecessarily. That was the struggle with RT that ultimately led to its demise. This opens the door to a better RT. And the same for NanoSem. They're both really important things. All right, let's jump back to the keynote a little bit. We'll talk a little Azure because, you know, there's a whole other room there. One of the most exciting announcements for me was this Cosmos DB. Not because it's a fast database, but because it's next level cloud thinking. Now that you have a cloud, now that you have developers in the space, how would we build products differently? Yes, we moved SQL Server to the cloud. Yes, we moved Mongo to the cloud. But what if you were going to be cloud native? You were going to think cloud all the way. So distribution was a constant concept, right? That's how they're getting these incredibly low ping times. Really now, those different products represent communication languages. How do you speak to your data? Rather than the product itself. You don't actually care about the SQL engine. You care that you can write a SQL expression and get the result back that you expect. What happens on the back end? Not your problem. Should just work. With reliability, integrity, maintainability. That's the point of Cosmos DB. They've built a universal data engine that understands all the core metaphors of data, and then they've just put different languages in front of it, depending on what you and your code are comfortable with. And that's important. That's very profound if you think about it, because that means I don't have to shift all of my code. You built me a way forward and also provided me this stunningly large range of capabilities to think more broadly about how I want my app to live, where it's going to live, how it moves around. And we're going to see more languages. We're going to see more tooling inside of Cosmos DB. Again, there's Ash Prasad's doing a talk on that just before lunch, and if that is exciting to you, you should take a look. Definitely, this is cloud concepts here. The cloud's got a challenge. There are 3 big players. Obviously, Microsoft is one. Amazon is the original. Amazon is not really a technology company. Amazon is a warehousing company. And in that mindset, they're extremely good at selling things for as little money as possible. They're an extremely lean organization, and they built the cloud because it was the cheapest way for them to build the infrastructure they needed to sell you things. That's what they do. And so their tendency is to race to the bottom on pricing. Build the simplest product possible that people want, make it as cheap as possible. That is the model. That is not the best software model. Microsoft knows better than to go down that race. What makes more sense is to elevate. That's what Cosmos DB looks like. A smarter platform so that we write less code, get better results. Right? That's the goal. And by that token, their introduction of MySQL and Postgres as services inside of Azure speaks to exactly that same concept. Yes, you can run Postgres in Azure. Not a big deal. Set up a VM, install your favorite flavor of Linux, configure Postgres, maintain your own updates, maintain your own patching, maintain your own security. Or, for a low monthly rate, we will do all of that for you. You just fire off your transactions. That's what turning it into a service is all about, right? That's elevating the platform, making us more effective, less time on plumbing, more time on specific features. How long before these flavors are part of Cosmos as well? It's a pattern of behavior, and it's a constructive one ultimately for us. I'm not going to talk an awful lot about the web story. And actually, several sessions here that I think are really important, but the stories were not surprising. We are gone farther in containers. Containers are going to be part of our natural reflex in building software pretty quickly. And Azure can certainly help you there, but it can also run on-prem, however you want to do it. Service Fabric, amazing technology, also very cloud-centric. Microsoft's been depending on it for a long time. You know, one of the changes that's happened in Microsoft, having talked to the teams, is that mistake they made with WPF, where they didn't use it for several years, that doesn't happen anymore. The original set of developers that wrote C#, guys like Anders Halsberg, Mads Torgersen, and so forth, the original version of C# written way back in 2000, 2001, 2002, was written in C++. What really happened with Rosalind, jumping up to 2013, 2014, they rewrote C# in C#. Now, that's weird, right? Very Inception-y. Right? What did Inception teach us other than running a virtual machine inside of a virtual machine means to go slowly? When your team writes a language in that language, they also think in that language, the same language all we think in. Suddenly the team understands us better because they live in C# just as much as we do. As long as there's C++ developers talking to C# developers, there's going to be a disconnect. When C# developers talk to C# developers, things get better. TypeScript, same thing. TypeScript's written in TypeScript. I know it's a weird way to think, but that's what happens. And it's one of the things that Microsoft's doing better and better at. Service Fabric is how Azure actually runs. It's why it's good. So if you're able to embrace it, if you're interested in embracing it, you know, those things are there. Last week, Microsoft opened an Azure data center in South Africa. So they are the first in Africa. Azure Stack is incredibly profound for this. It hasn't released yet. I always thought it was a checklist item, because everybody says, well, I want to be able to run, I'll use your cloud, but I want to be able to run in premise as well. It's like, that's fine. We'll give you Azure Stack, right? Azure Stack is the idea of Azure as an architecture as much as Azure as a product or a place. Now, if you want to run Azure Stack in the current incarnation, you literally have to buy a specific set of hardware that Microsoft delineates for you. And you're committing to a monthly fee because Microsoft patches that thing. You stay in the patch cycle of Azure. You are literally an extension of Azure, although it's private, it's yours, it's your own copy of the cloud. And I don't think the main customer for Azure Stack is going to be individual companies who want to use cloud architecture on premise. I think the main will be smaller regional ISPs. An ISP here in Vancouver is going to buy a bunch of Azure Stack and offer it to us so that we can have Azure architecture, but be local in Vancouver, be local in BC. I don't know, why would we wait for Microsoft to get around to setting up a data center here in BC if a local provider could do it for us, so we could just rent it from them? And that's where I think, you think Azure's spread along the wrong way across the world right now? Wait till Azure Stack actually comes out into the world. And you have all of these effectively specialist vertical groups lighting up pieces of this shared cloud that they can rent out pieces to you. And you can set your own SLA around it. Things that Microsoft would never do for you. But architecturally the same. And if you get tired of that vendor, move to another Azure Stack vendor. And if you get tired of that vendor, move to public Azure. You have a choice. By having a common set of patterns, we can go anywhere. By the way, third vendor in the space is Google Cloud Platform. I have nothing bad to say about them. I think it's a remarkable group of folks. If they knew how to actually explain their product, I think people would be a whole lot more excited about it. If you follow the Kubernetes path that Azure's got implemented, it will run equally as well on GCP, which is interesting. When I talk to organizations trying to figure out how am I going to be redundant across clouds, Docker is a technology you can look at, Azure Stack's a technology to look at, and Kubernetes is a technology you can look at. There was a piece in the keynote around these VR headsets. Mostly their price point, these are supposed to be between $300 and $400 US this Christmas. If we're going to break loose on VR in a big way, because Oculus and Vive haven't done it, maybe these are the ones. And there wasn't a lot in the keynotes about it. It was kind of cool. These are the new controllers, and gee, aren't they blinky? It's an extra $100. That's why it's $300 without the controls, $400 with. And I guess that's American dollars, so metric conversion. Canadian dollars. The best thing I saw at Build regarding VR and AR, because it really wasn't much about HoloLens at all, was a demo area inside the Build event. The 8 people at a time would go in. 6 of them would be putting on these Acer headsets, 2 of them would be wearing HoloLenses. And they'd all be working in the same environment. The VR people were quote unquote on the ground. They were literally in a space with a mission to find a particular location. The HoloLens people, when they put their headset on, they were looking at a table that was a representation of the world and could see the individuals wearing the VR headsets moving around in it. And so they could give instructions. So it was 8 people effectively operating in the same space, but having distinctly different viewpoints depending on their role in the project and the kind of device they're using. That blew my mind, because it just got me thinking about what you would do, say, in an architectural review of a building, where the VR headsets can go right into the wall, but the AR headsets are looking at the overall structure. You know, in every project I've ever worked on, I assess who's head up, who's head down. Most people need to be head down, working on their individual pieces. But if you don't have anybody head up, they're all going in different directions. Head up, folks, make sure we're going in the right direction. And that was what this little sample app was about, is that the folks on the ground with the VR headsets could never solve this if they didn't get a few hints and directions from the HoloLens folks that were able to see the world as a whole. That sounds like project management to me. You know, my team lead can't write all the code. But if he's not making sure we're writing the right code, we're not going to get to the right place either. So the idea that we'd have a 3-dimensional exploratory relationship with that, I thought was a very profound demo. I suspect the reason it wasn't in the keynote, instead we had that silly Cirque du Soleil keynote. I don't know about you, but as a Canadian, I get really embarrassed when they put up Cirque du Soleil these days. Like, yes, but they're French Canadians. I'm from a different part. Yeah, but I think the reason they did the Cirque du Soleil demo was that they couldn't figure out a way to represent what I thought was a very profound app in a keynote environment. Because it was it was so good that after you did it once in one role, you wanted to do it in the other role. Right? It was just a breakthrough way of thinking about how you might play a game, how you might solve any number of problems. Different ways of exploring a space, different ways of exploring data. The jury's still out, in my mind, on whether or not VR, AR, MR is really going to happen in a big way. The way I often look at it, and I think about the HoloLens this way as well, is it an iPhone or is it a Newton? Same company, okay, and I'm dating myself, that's 20 years ago. More than 20 years ago, Apple made a device called the Newton. It's sort of vaguely iPhone shaped, it was just lousy, that's all. He used a pen on it. It was interesting. It lasted a couple of years. They were too far ahead of the market. You know, the genius of the iPhone is that it came out at a point where they could find a market. And I would argue that was the end of the smartphone, not the beginning. When iPhone came out, it was this. It was a flat piece of black glass. Before this, it was all these variations, right? Do you want a pop-out keyboard? Do you want a side keyboard? Like, there was all different ways you could make a phone. But once the iPhone came out, that was kind of the end of it. And they've pretty much been peddling the same thing ever since. We're still in such early days around augmented reality and virtual reality. We're still feeling around. No, I don't know that anyone's made an iPhone yet. Now, it was because of this hardware that HoloLens 2 didn't get released. This was said, I'm not giving away any secret here. Microsoft said it very kind of quietly. They just said, you know, we're going to wait for 3rd edition HoloLens hardware. We've been using the same HoloLenses now since 2014, or 2015. 3rd generation hardware, who knows how good that's actually going to be. I hope it's great because it's been too long. I think one of the reasons that Microsoft didn't bother, I think 2 reasons that Microsoft didn't bother shipping a HoloLens 2. One was, didn't want to step on this, wanted to see if this would actually go well. Here were third-party companies in the form of Acer and HP making hardware to come out this Christmas, runs UWP, so you already know how to program it, and if they put out a HoloLens on top of that, it would be very hard to sell. And there is no competition in the mixed reality space. The magic leap still hasn't appeared, right? There's just nobody else really trying to make a product in the space, so they can afford to wait another generation. I expect probably the fall of 2018, which means maybe build 2019, we'll see a new HoloLens, and we'll see what happens. And all of that changes the moment a real competitor shows up in the landscape, and Microsoft has to stop lollygagging around with make it a little better, tweak this, tweak that. Tech companies are terrible when they're in the lead. They're terrible when they're in the lead. They are great when they're chasing. Microsoft was awesome when they were coming from behind trying to win the market. The moment they won the market, AKA XP, when they were now 90% of the workstations, things just went south. Now that they're chasing again, they're getting pretty good. Apple was awesome when they were chasing. Now they're in the lead. How are they doing? Another class of computing that I think is very interesting, they talk a little bit about it. Amazon defined it. I wouldn't say by accident. Amazon's made a lot of different bits of hardware. Many of them have not worked, right? The Fire, the phone, didn't go anywhere. This is Alexa, or the Echo, depending on what name you want to use. Why did this one succeed? Why is this doing so well in the market space? What's different about it? It came with a product, and that product was letting you buy stuff. It doesn't work in Canada, so that's why we're not particularly interested, but in the United States, people are hooked on the fact that they can drop this thing down, on their counter and literally say, Alexa, I need more dishwashing soap, and it will be there that day, right? Not that that's a profound product, but it's the hook. You get Alexa for that capability, and then you find out it will also tell you the weather, tell you a bad joke. Communicate with your music system, communicate with your audio system. There's a bunch of other stuff it does, but the hook was the sales product. That's what got it in more homes than any other. Now Microsoft did show off the Harman Kardon Invoke device. This is the Cortana version of that, and there's a pre-order for this. It's a few $100s. We'll see what happens with it. I mean, Cortana's been hanging around on our laptops for a while, but that's not where you want it. And then Google's in the game with the home device as well. So this is equal opportunity spying, right? We have many options to have things listening in our rooms. This is a concept we're now calling ambient computing. So the idea that compute is simply around us, waiting to serve us in one form or another. And that's fine, we're varying degrees of comfort level with that. The new incarnation of that is this device. This is the new Amazon device that now has a screen on it as well, which I think is very interesting because up till now it's just been a disembodied voice that speaks back to you in unexpected moments. We're finding out cool things like kids learn how to talk to it. Next thing you know, you own more Pokemon you knew what to do with. So put some gates on some of those things, but now it actually has a screen on it as well. And some folks are talking about whether this is the new level computing rather than this. And again, I'm not entirely sure whether this is a Newton or an iPhone, but ambient computing only works when we have ubiquity. That's why the old name was ubiquitous computing. They stopped using that name because they knew they couldn't get there. Too many devices. We've seen the videos, even Microsoft's made some, where there's simply screens popping up on the sides of our taxi cabs, and everywhere we go, there's available computing all the time. Ubiquitous computing, right? That was the idea. And this sort of speaks to that idea if you're willing to keep dropping $200 for each room, right? Alexa just got a Plex interface. I like Plex, but my Alexa's in my office, and I don't watch Plex in my office. Do I really want to buy one for the living room? Am I really going to argue with Alexa about what show I want to watch before it puts it on? Rather than just pick up the remote and use my Xbox to put on the show via Plex? Is that better? The other thing I've noticed with all of those voice-driven devices is they're extremely good at serving their products, not so good at serving your products. So these are all devices to put us down a particular pipeline. I think the two are going to live side by side because if I'm wearing a visor, and I'm going to use that term rather than a HoloLens, but the idea that I have computing directly into my eyes, I have ubiquitous computing. It's on me all of the time. It's immediately available in my sight. It's immediately available to my voice. Until we actually spread the computers everywhere in the world, let's just wear one. And folks say, I would not be caught dead in this thing, right? You'll have the Google Glass effect. I have a Google Glass as well. right? But I don't wear it because I don't want to be a glass hole. Why was the Google Glass socially unacceptable? It wasn't the camera. That's the excuse, right? The real thing here is, was it compelling enough to break a social norm? Once upon a time, whipping out your phone in the middle of a conversation to check something or walking around, this wasn't socially acceptable either. When my daughters were in their teens and I got them both smartphones, the smartphones came to the dining table and the wife was less than impressed. We were going to make a rule about no smartphones at the dining table. I said, before you do that, and I got her a smartphone too. And we all had smartphones at the table and everybody was happy. You change the social contract when the technology is compelling enough. This is compelling enough. That might be compelling enough. The actual reaction the few times I ever wore the Google Glass out was people wanted to try it. And then when they were disappointed with it, they made an excuse for why they wouldn't buy it. There's a reason to be disappointed about it. It just wasn't good enough. How many folks have had a HoloLens on? It's pretty damn good. Now, is it $3,000 good? But the overall experience, the concept of something that sees your world and adds additional information to your world, that's compelling. I think it's over the threshold. Maybe it's the next generation of device, maybe it's somebody else's that moves this market along. But I think the visor is the thing that will unseat the smartphones as our digital extension of self, right? We are all now cyborgs. We have an electronic extension to ourself that provides us as much information as we want, some of it's even true, and allows us to communicate around the world at any time. We are far more powerful than the President of the United States in the 1960s because we have this device. We can elevate this device. That's sort of the next vision beyond that. I'm going to go darker. Project Rome and Microsoft Graph. Graph's been around for a while. They talked about this quite a bit. Graph's really part of Office 365, and it's tied in with the fact that you and all of your coworkers are all in Office 365, interacting with email, interacting with documents, building projects, and it's sort of evaluating that information in real time and showing you the relationships between them and the opportunities therein. It helps you coordinate meetings. Because I can see everybody's calendars, I can quickly figure out these are the times you want to look at because people aren't available otherwise. Those sorts of things. What's really happening to Graph in the build context is they put some good interfaces on it for Studio 2017. But it's even more important when we tie it to Project Rome. Because Project Rome is now saying, how do we use all of our devices with all of the information? So, and in the videos they were showing, I was doing something on my phone, and then I switched to my PC and I picked up exactly where I left off. So just that idea of seamless movement from one place to the other. We can talk about music, but it's far more interesting from a project perspective. Heck, everybody's now talking about, even telcos are talking about, I have a conversation going on my phone, I come into my office, it hops over to my landline, here I am. But thinking more broadly about that, more importantly, thinking about our own software being able to do this, move seamlessly between devices, be able to keep track of what we worked on and where. All those things are pretty compelling. And I'm thinking, this sounds an awful lot like Passport, if you're old enough to remember. Why is it better now? Well, a couple of reasons. One is we're way more fragmented. We all have multiple devices. When I put on conferences today, I now budget 4 IPs per person because I'm dealing with devs, right? Everybody else will be fine. You know, there's no other situation where you have to consider how many people will actually run their own DHCP servers and serving IPs on your network. But if you're dealing with devs, that's actually an issue. So we have the device fragmentation issue. I also think if you spend a little time with Project Rome, go look at its SDK, Microsoft's being incredibly open about this. There are online interfaces for you to explore the SDK. Log in with your own account. It'll show you what data it has. You can go down to individual devices and say, I don't have the device anymore. Take it out. It doesn't have any rights anymore. You individual apps per device. That one can do this, the other one can do that. You have very granular control. Because we are dealing with a privacy issue here, right? Graph has a creepiness factor attached to it that is watching all these behaviors. But if we can see it and control it and choose what we show and what we don't show, well, then we have a little more control over this. Because now we get into I think, the largest talking point in this whole thing. AI is coming. Now, AI is a terrible name. I generally think about artificial intelligence as that's the technology that doesn't work yet. Because as soon as it does work, we give it a new name, right? AI used to be voice control. The moment voice control worked, call it voice control, right? They're calling this AI right now. It's from the Keynote. This was the crazy demo, right? They put cameras all over a so-called construction site, and the cameras are able to identify every person, every tool, every location. And they showed it as a safety concept, that when somebody brushed by a bin and knocked it over and it spilled a chemical, that the technology was able to identify, there's a chemical spill in this area, it's this chemical, we need these resources, go over here. Everybody else stay away. When someone was looking for the hot saw, it was able to say, it's in the Suite 26 ballroom. Why did Microsoft show this? Because it didn't end with, and here's an SDK. And here's a hint, it's eventually going to end with an SDK. They were trying to socialize a concept. Google did too, in their Google I/O. That's happened between when this was released and now. We're all talking about these technologies and showing them off because we're concerned about the creepiness factor, right? I watched this video with alternating between, that's really cool, and holy crap, that's terrifying, right? There is this idea in robotics called the uncanny valley. Have you heard of this? As long as they seem like industrial robots or, cute robots, that's fine. But there's a point where you dip into this sort of disgust zone, where it's not quite human, not quite right, and your body has a very visceral reflex to it. If you get it perfect, you're fine, you're up there. If you don't get it perfect, you drop into the uncanny valley, and it's upsetting to people. People don't want to interact with it. The Japanese are indulging in robots that fall neatly into the uncanny valley these days. You can watch videos galore on it. I think there's an AI uncanny valley too, where the technology is too creepy to use. But it's coming, it's kind of unavoidable.
So what is AI?
It's an excellent question, that's why I call it, it's all the technology that doesn't currently work, right? Really. The ultimate manifestation of AI is going to, if you get into scientific terms, is the idea of an artificial generalized intelligence, making a consciousness. But at this point where we still can't really define consciousness, that's going to be tricky. All right? But as we carve off, one would have said, being able to play chess at a grandmaster level, that's artificial intelligence. These days we call it deep blue, right? Playing Go, arguably the most difficult game in the world at a professional's level, is artificial intelligence now. It's called AlphaGo. As we solve each of these narrow artificial intelligence, specific skills, we give them new names. So as we are carving into this area of computers being able to serve in our roles, to do things that we have otherwise equated with humanness, we keep tagging on that name. Now Microsoft has bet big on artificial intelligence. Make no mistake, very, very big. Harry Shum is the president of the new artificial intelligence group. He's one of the smartest people at Microsoft. And Microsoft is full of smart people. Like, when I heard that Harry Shum is going to run the division, it's like, that division is important. Microsoft has decided that when you think artificial intelligence, you're going to think Microsoft. And that's why I think they did those videos, was to get you thinking about it. What was also interesting is just before that demo, Satya threw up a copy of 1984. Now at the time, before he did the AI demo, I thought he was just referring to what's going on down south. But as he did the AI demo, it became more salient to me because there's a lot to 1984. It may be a while since you read the book, but there's been many, many editions of this book that really express cultural concerns around it. It just keeps going and going. We're talking about dystopia. Right? That's what this book was about at the time. This is a technology that could facilitate this in a very real way. And we're all concerned. We've seen what's been happening recently with our technology. Internet will not save you. We have to use it right. It's up to us, especially in this particular case. We are the ones that are going to build this. When these tools come into our hands, when it's simply an SDK that will do vision mapping of any number of objects, you watch that video How long before it's how many smoke breaks did you take? How often did you go to the bathroom? How much actual work did you do today? How many nails did you drop? There's a dark place to go. And this time, we choose. It's up to us. This is our gate in civilization. And we're going to get to choose. In the late 40s, a group of physicists came up with a weapon so insanely powerful that they eventually realized it could destroy the world. And they stayed in the conversation. As the credible witnesses, they had built that weapon, they knew what it could do, and they forced it to not get used. Now, there's lots wrong with nuclear weapons. I prefer they didn't exist. But the fact that they do, and we've managed not to use them, is a pretty good thing. And I think it's our turn now as software developers. And we're not doing a good job so far. Have you read up on Grayball? Do you know what this is? So Grayball is a piece of code inside of the Uber app that tracks what people are doing. It also hides Uber app's behavior from certain people. So the fact that it was tracking, even if you uninstalled it, it actually inserted a virus into your phone and continued to track you. So if drivers quit Uber and joined Lyft, they would know they'd done it. How did it not get caught by the Cupertino folks? Because there was a piece of software in that app that said, hey, if we're in Cupertino, don't run any of that stuff. They had code in there so that if it was running on they were looking at the iPhone IDs, and they had a group of folks that would figure out the iPhone IDs of the regulators. So New York City employees, whenever they fired up Uber, there were no cars available. Oh, it doesn't do anything anyway. Now, admittedly, Travis Kalanick is not a nice man. He has a history of doing these sorts of things, and Uber is not a nice company. What upsets me, somebody wrote that software. They know what it does. Yeah, it was their job. You can play all of the Crisis of the Commons, somebody else will write it. None of it's real. The real thing is here, we choose. It's up to us. We choose what we do with this technology going forward. It is incredibly powerful. It will change the world. And we get to choose whether it saves lives or it controls them. Whether it brings happiness or it brings fear. Whether it empowers everyone or just a few people. That's the technology in front of us. That's our choice right now. And they will remember how we chose. Our grandchildren will have this manifest on them as well. I hope you have a good day today. There's lots to see, but I hope you'll think about this, because we're about to choose what this technology does, and it's ultimately up to us. Have a great day. Thank you so much for your time. So Azure on that side, not Azure on this side. We'll take a quick break, grab yourself a coffee, and the sessions will start.